The Boys, like most shows these days, ended on a very underwhelming note. And one thing most people can agree on is, a lot of it didn't make sense.
We're all in this together.
Instead of normally going chronologically through the season, I think it'll be best for this video to focus on the most devoid of logic aspects. Starting with the first one, and this should be plaguing everyone's thoughts, the power scaling in Season 5 is horrendous. If you don't know what power scaling is, it's nerfing or buffing a hero's attributes in any given moment to fulfill the plot point the writer wants. Now, to be fair, this is featured in pretty much all superhero media, but it's the job of the writer to mask this and create plausible and realistic scenarios that don't break your story's established rules. For Season 5 of The Boys, the writers just gave up on power scaling. This happens in every set piece, and it's obviously the worst in the finale, where the writers have to quickly wrap up and kill 3 superheroes in one sequence. For the Deep, he doesn't really feature power scaling issues, and everything surrounding him, though, is very contrived. As a quick side tangent, having Annie taxi him all the way to a beach just so that he can die to his fish comrades is a perfect example of a forced plot point. When, throwing him into the ocean from Annie's perspective would be giving him a massive buff. But anyways, for O Father, there's an instance here of power scaling that doesn't even apply to a superhero, and that's Mother's Milk. In order to kill O Father, they use Chekhov's titanium ball gag to hold in his mouth and thus explode his head while he's yelling. However, this implies that Mother's Milk would need super strength to hold this gag in place. He's holding back enough force to explode a Soup's head. A Soup that also has super durability, by the way. Flat out ridiculous, and I think this point really highlights a contrast to Season 1. Where coming up with a way to kill Translucent was very involved, was meticulous, and there was experimentation. The characters were actually trying to solve a difficult problem, and they came up with a clever solution. Then for O Father, the fact that Huey is just improvising is insane.
Oi! This shot is diabolical!
He doesn't have a plan to kill O Father. He just lures him away, and luckily, Mother's Milk saves him where the milk that he's been drinking has been laced with super strength. Whatever, so in this White House, which, by the way, only contains 3 superheroes, and that's also including Homelander, why is there not significantly more present? They know the boys are coming, and naturally when they show up confidently throughout the show, they tend to have something up their sleeve. Homelander literally knows that Kimiko was possibly given Soldier Boy's powers. His disillusionment of thinking he's immortal should be moot, or at least be slightly wavering with that development, and he should be taking more preventative measures to stay alive. So this highlights a general power leveling aspect where Homelander's force is extremely weak. He has the potential to have like a secret service that's purely composed of superheroes, which in of itself would be an exciting climax. And to be fair, the kill box they set up actually should have worked. Or more so in the regard of killing the non-Soup characters. Them surviving that without being shot was a terrible way to start the finale. So with mostly everything else in the White House addressed, let's talk about the absolute fuckery of Homelander's power leveling. First, looking at this final fight scene, quite literally all of his powers have been drastically nerfed. Super strength, durability, laser eyes, and speed. You name it, it's been butchered so Butcher can kill Homelander. For super strength and durability, Homelander is so weakened to the point that Butcher is able to go toe-to-toe with him, instead of Homelander turning him into a fine paste. Like, Homelander is one of the strongest Soups on the planet. His punches should be sending people through multiple walls. The creators do a really bad job at communicating the strength in this scene, especially since we stay in the same set. It creates this artificial limitation where Homelander can't really express his powers. You're not allowed to leave this tiny box. Also, it's embarrassing that my mind immediately goes to Captain America Brave New World for having a significantly better White House superhero fight, and that movie was terrible. Maybe Amazon lowered the budget if anything this season since they reused the same handful of sets. Only the Rings of Power is allowed to burn through hundreds of millions a season. Then, Homelander's laser eyes no longer have any piercing, Which is funny because he cut Kimiko in half in episode 1. Doing that alone would basically disable her and would ruin Eric Kripke's entire finale. If you were to make the argument that Kimiko is now super durable or whatever, then that still leaves Homelander's option of easily getting away with super speed. To go through some examples, Herogasm in Season 3 has him zipping around very quickly, and in Season 5 itself, he's keeping up with A-Train. It's also not like he has low acceleration.
Fuck my life.
There's clearly instances of him going from 0 to 100 in less than a second. Even the Season 1 finale sees Homelander save Butcher from an explosion. So the writers needed that aspect to be disabled to have Homelander die here. It's funny because when you think about it, Homelander ironically gets significantly weaker after taking the V1, as if becoming immortal drained the potency to all of his powers. This problem on its own is why the finale is so underwhelming. There's no clever solutions, they're altering the internal logic of the story to achieve artificial plot points, and at the end of the day, this scene lacks creativity. You have the means to do anything. The possibilities are endless in the superhero genre, and this scene in that regard especially is insulting given how many years have been building up to this ultimate climax. And while Homelander getting depowered is a good moment, the writer's journey to get here was utterly abysmal. It's the personification of forced writing. Then before moving on from power leveling, there's another aspect to Homelander that was extremely inconsistent throughout the season, which is his super hearing.
What did you say?
Some scenes he can hear the most minute details from far away, and in others, very loud actions happening one wall or floor away he can't hear. Like Annie's fight with Black Noir behind the stage in episode 1, and the boys brawling in the basement of Fort Harmony while Homelander is one floor above them in episode 4. Both of these examples have it to where if Homelander could actually hear them, then the narrative flat out wouldn't work because he'd stop them. Especially episode 4, which was just a clusterfuck. Then to quickly throw in some power leveling highlights before moving on, Black Noir 2's death was so weak, bro is keeping his back turned to a rage-fueled and idiotic deep. Sage's intellect is all over the place this season, but we'll discuss her more in the character section. Butcher's tentacles are either made out of ramen noodles, or it's as if he's a human form of the Kraken. The writers choose to not include Annie in the main plot for episode 4 because they know she would have wiped the floor with everyone. She has an awkward departure where she's like, me being around endangers everyone. But her not being around is worse because then the boys would have way less protection. A-Train running in a straight line during his entire chase was very puzzling. You'd think zigzagging through a forest would be his best method to lose Homelander. His death very much gives the vibes of Rickon running in a straight line. It feels like the writers killed A-Train right away because speedsters are notoriously hard to write given how overpowered they are. With that, let's move on to the next aspect that genuinely pissed me off, and that's what they did with Marie Moreau. For context, if you haven't seen Gen V, Marie is noted at the end of Season 2 as being one of the strongest soups in existence, basically being on Homelander's level. She's a bloodbender, can manipulate it and even explode blood or stop a heart, she can control people, can bring people back to life after just dying, and can flat out alter someone's DNA and fix diseases and other general ailments. It gets pretty crazy. Maisie on her own could probably win against Homelander. She's arguably stronger than him. So the fact that the writers completely write out her character is utterly infuriating because she's the silver bullet to take down Homelander. Her existence alone made the whole virus plot seem like a red herring because they already had a solution to kill Homelander that they weren't using. And then, bafflingly enough, they pivot the silver bullet from Marie to giving Kimiko Soldier Boy's powers, which in of itself seems so dumb, and Sage helping them here and not even showing us her solution is simply lazy writing. It seems like the main reason why the creators do this is because they want to fulfill the specific endpoint of Homelander getting depowered. However, you could actually do the same thing with Marie. She can control the blood in his body and effectively disable him. Or hell, even rewrite his DNA to take away his powers or something. She's basically Pandora's box when it comes to superhero strength. Now, writing Marie into the finale where it's still a satisfying scene would be challenging. You'd probably need to come up with a mechanic that distracts Marie away from fighting Homelander initially until she finally comes in to help or whatever. But the option the writers use of flat out sidelining her character is baffling. The boys desperately need help to take on Homelander. Why would you send her away? And then past this moment, Annie gaslights Marie in episode 7 when she first shows up and says this.
We want to help.
What good's all that power, Marie, if you can't control it?
Like, I'm sorry, but wasn't the entire point of Gen V Season 2 being Marie learning how to harness her power's potential? She gets a pretty good understanding of it by the end, and accomplishes some outstanding feats, greatly raising her confidence, and it seemed like they were priming her character to be properly integrated into the boys. So it just seems extremely disrespectful towards her character and even the audience who invested the time to watch this spin-off show. You're borderline retconning her character out of existence, and then do a convoluted and contorted backflip of giving Kimiko Soldier Boy's powers. Absolute nonsense. For a topic that's all over the place, let's take a look at some of the most problematic characters because nothing about their arcs are logical or at all consistent. Sister Sage. Sage is another superhero that is a power-leveling black hole. With her power of being the smartest person on the planet, she theoretically would be able to see almost anything coming, she'd be able to prevail, and come up with immaculate plans that allow her to succeed. However, Season 5 invalidates all of that, and it's as if Sage is in a perpetual state of her lobotomized self. She doesn't really have much of an overarching plan, she's almost entirely reactionary, and her agency has been assassinated in between seasons. She basically just meanders around in Vought all season and occasionally gets mad at Homelander. And then the worst thing about her character is that the writers have her main downfall be her underestimating the love between a father and son, which that aspect was really inconsistent as well throughout the season, but the issue here is that Ashley just informed Sage about this brewing problem. How is she still getting blindsided by it and going on about how love is unpredictable? Like, no, you're the smartest person in the world and have read thousands of books. Your understanding of love should be pretty good, if anything. Far better than the average person, at least. Then another ironically idiotic thing about her character is her stated motivation. She wants the world to end so she can retire to her fallout bunker and live out her life in peace. But like, she can still do that without destroying the world. Why would you bother with this massively convoluted plan to achieve that? You can argue that it's pride and she wants power, but just given her stated motivation, she'd realistically dip out and retire at the beginning of Season 5. And her ending as well is very confusing. She suddenly wants to be depowered despite never wanting that, because you'd assume she would have approached Soldier Boy if she actually had that goal. So then piecing out to go to Hogwarts was a very jarring end to her character.
Wands up, bitches. Sage out.
How disappointing.
Butcher. The end of Season 4 Butcher and his Season 5 counterpart are like different characters. I got the impression that we were getting a very dark, uncompromising, and scorched earth type version of Butcher for Season 5, as if he's being controlled by the tumors within his body, the ever-consuming presence, fueling his hate and wanting to wipe out all soups on the planet. Potentially and hopefully breaking the status quo of working together with his team, where they normally pull him back and they're the voice of reason. However, Season 5 is still that. Nothing has really changed. He's just made of angry noodles now.
Noodles. Don't noodles.
The show doesn't really explore the internality of his character. He is darker or at least a little more edgy than usual, but the writers really put emphasis on Butcher gaining back his compassion through Terror, his dog. And then once he loses that anchor in the ending, he then finally goes scorched earth. This to me highlights the writers copping out and folding back to the status quo. Something we had the impression was finally going to be broken in the last season. But everyone was back together by episode 2. The whole consequence of using Temp V and that signing his death warrant ended up doing the opposite. Butcher became a superhero with practically no downsides. And the downside should be him being incapable of working with others given his blind hatred. Butcher should be like an angry lone wolf in season 5, being wholly unpredictable and not actually working together with his team, only intersecting with them at big plot events, and he'd naturally act as a foil. He'd be the extreme solution versus the measured solution of the boys. Instead, the writers force Butcher like a misaligned puzzle piece into the good side, when his character should be incapable of reconciling with that. The writers default his character and are invalidating past consequences that gave the story stakes. It feels so cheap and is further evidence that they should have just ended the boys at season 3. Homelander. Homelander as a character, I feel, is very compromised by Eric Kripke forcing him into a direction that doesn't fully suit his character, turning him into being flat out crazy when that wasn't always the case. He used to be more of a psychotic man-child that was at least a tad bit pragmatic. He actually used his brain. Now, he's hallucinating godlike encounters that fully indoctrinates his character into being an insane Christo-nationalist that thinks he's God. It's such a jarring and sudden shift to take him, and there's actually a natural transition point if you want to sell this character arc. Have Homelander initiate this god complex shift when he takes the V1, but move up that plot point earlier in the season. So now this philosophy shift synergizes with him being immortal. It makes more sense for him to go from A to B. Additionally, you can lean on the ambiguity of, is this drug messing with his mind?
Tight, yeah!
Are the hallucinations a side effect? I don't think we should literally see Homelander witnessing these visions because that would aid the ambiguity and make his character more interesting. This general change of moving up the plot point of Homelander taking V1 would also indirectly fix other things, like the plot stalling out and spinning in circles in regards to the development of the virus, and can allow the writers to do more things later in the season, like ideally, containing more consequential and big plot events that communicate the whole scorched earth mantra of season 5. So as a whole, I think Homelander's arc could work, it just doesn't flow that well in the narrative. Soldier Boy. It feels like the writers wanted the story archetype of a father and son rekindling their relationship, but just didn't at all try to make things work for the execution. There's so many points throughout the season where you have to suspend your disbelief in Soldier Boy not taking out Homelander at any point. You can make an argument that he wouldn't want to kill his son, but he was perfectly fine with doing that at the end of season 3. Why would that not really carry over as much in season 5? Especially after Homelander betrays his trust in episode 2. Soldier Boy for half the season has the stated objective of making sure Homelander doesn't get V1, and wants him to die basically so he can take over the 7. Everything surrounding him just feels really forced in terms of the writers wanting to include his character, and his presence this time around was honestly annoying. All of his dialogue was as if the writers were hitting a soundboard for dick jokes.
Dick wet, cock ring. Cock gobbler, suck my hog. Dick wet, suck my hog. Dick wet, cock ring. Did you fuck me? What?
Then he ends up going back on ice, and that's really his character's ending? The writers genuinely couldn't give him a better ending than that? Whatever. The rest of the characters aren't as bad, and I'll run through some problematic character points quickly. Frenchie immediately dying after his function in the plot was fulfilled lacked impact. It felt like a very safe and formulaic death. Not to mention that Sister Sage should have come up with a tangible plan to escape Homelander. She's kind of the smartest person on the planet.
I'm an idiot. I don't deserve these powers, if I'm being honest,
First thing that comes to mind is using the virus to incapacitate Homelander briefly, like what happened with Soldier Boy, and lock him in the kryptonite chamber. So, ironically, the one death that did happen was kind of preventable, in an overall show with rampant plot armor, which I find ironic. Mother's Milk has a pretty rushed and underdeveloped arc of becoming cynical and then reversing on that. Huey is your usual emotional support golden retriever. Kimiko should have stayed mute. Good lord.
Fucking therapy, and so much fucking TikTok.
Like the better with her mouth shut.
Also, her saying she escaped prior to episode 1 was very convenient, and she probably would have ended up in a perpetual radioactive jail if they couldn't kill her. And then the rest of the characters I thought were fine to good, with the most interesting being Firecracker, Ashley, and O-Father. O-Father especially kind of carried the season for me.
He is the prophet of the Lord!
alongside Anthony Starr knocking it out in every scene. Same goes for every actor, it's a very talented cast. For the next aspect, let's take the plunge into the general ocean of plot armor. It's so vast and deep that it's impossible to ignore. This has been an issue that has been getting progressively worse throughout the show, where the boys used to be grounded and subversive. Season 1 actually felt tense. When our characters were in danger, you felt that. Homelander searching for everyone was suspenseful. Then, unfortunately, through each consecutive season, it's become painfully clear that these characters aren't allowed to die, invalidating the tension of any action scene and turning this once subversive show into being something more generic. Fulfilling the classic words from Harvey Dent of,
"You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain."
dying a hero in that regard would have been ending on season 3. So for the general notion of plot armor, the writers basically come out and break the fourth wall by addressing this with Huey in episode 1.
By all sane logic, I should be dead. Or crazy, or both.
Then why aren't you?
This to me is a self-admission of, yeah, we're not really that show you fell in love with anymore. We're going to constantly put our characters into situations where they should die, but we just don't care about logic or any notion of tangible realism. That requires effort when it comes to writing. Like, going off of the notion of Huey admitting he should be dead, Season 5 basically kills him 3 times an episode. Some standout examples being Homelander killing his entire building of prisoner bunkmates to intimidate Huey, and doesn't actually kill Huey himself. Like, he's using Huey, MM, and Frenchie as bait, but what's to stop Homelander from killing them at any point before Butcher arrives? The trap is set. Butcher wouldn't be able to verify if his friends were still alive by the time he arrived. Homelander kind of just lets them live. In episode 2, Huey gets tackled so quickly that his body would have exploded like his girlfriend in episode 1. He also gets spared by Soldier Boy in that episode for some reason. Huey is able to fend off and survive against an invisible soup in episode 3. There's multiple instances in episode 4 with everyone duking it out at Fort Harmony where he should have died. Kimiko would have decimated both Huey and MM. Then in episode 7, Huey and Butcher literally get captured, and Homelander tells his goons, it's fine. I don't want them to be killed.
You want us to kill Butcher and Campbell?
Get Sage's location first. I think I'll be happy when Starlight and William Butcher are corpses.
Some wider examples of plot armor that I found funny throughout the season are everyone perfectly surviving the trap in episode 1. There's no casualties besides A-Train, and I expected more evil soups to show up besides just Homelander. Soldier Boy, I guess, is still homies with the boys at the end of episode 4 and doesn't care about killing them. Bombsight's not allowed to kill Mother's Milk and Frenchie in episode 6. Homelander finds the boys' hideout, and this very luckily only results in the death of a singular character. Like, let me focus on this point for a second. Homelander discovers their location, and the boys don't know that. Why is Homelander himself the only person there looking for them? Why not deploy a hit squad of soups to stake out their hideout, or even inform Homelander when the gang arrives? Homelander only checks a couple times if they're around, and has the attention span of a toddler. This plot point alone would basically result in the death of everyone. Moving on, the boys casually infiltrate a production crew in episode 7, despite being the most wanted people in the country. Not to mention Annie and MM's solution to not getting their minds read was getting high. But like, MM as an example takes a single hit, and I guess the writers insinuate that weed immediately takes effect. Along with them having their minds altered enough to not be able to be heard or read, but also still able to function and even fight soups later. And for that point, the lowest tier soups are left behind to kill the civilians so that MM and Annie could reasonably take them on, instead of O-Father doing the deed or any other of the stronger soups. And how the hell do they even extract all of these people? The compound would go on high alert the second they step out of that room, and there'd be no way they'd be able to get all of these people to the safe house without any hitches logistically. So yeah, in general, it feels like the writers stopped caring and leaned into all of the lazy writing hallmarks. The boys are not allowed to die, and Homelander has had so many opportunities to kill them. Even coming off as a joke in the finale where he's like, "Hey, I've spared you guys over a dozen times. Would you mind doing that once for me?"
Oh, wait, you serious?
To which they're like, sorry man, the writers aren't here to save you. For the final part of this video, let's cover and dissect the ending and epilogue. Some aspects of it are okay to good, and others are of course quite puzzling. Starting with Butcher, the lead up to his ending was jarring character-wise in a multitude of ways. Him getting depowered, I guess, conveniently solved all of his health problems. Season 3 consequences in shambles. Butcher's expectation of starting a family with Ryan after betraying him is hilarious. Dad, I fucking hate you. Get away from me. And the crux of his character turn is on Terror randomly dying. Like, that's really the tipping point for Butcher? Kind of odd. And a funny anecdote here as well is Butcher casually breaking into Vought headquarters as if it's nothing. That would have been useful to do throughout Season 5. Like, I don't know, doing what one of the posters of the season showed, with the tower being in ruins. Imagine how cool it would have been if the opening scene of Season 5 was Butcher walking out of Vought Tower and then he explodes its foundations, bringing everything down, setting up and delivering on the clear expectation that this is the final season and we're going scorched earth. It's not like the show would break or anything by doing that. I think Homelander at that point would transition to the White House faster. This is also touching on a wider issue where the marketing behind Season 5 genuinely feels like false advertising, and the creators gaslighting the fandom and having false expectations because of that is crazy considering what they showed on their posters. That's fundamentally not our show, but also, look at how cool these posters are. Season 5 is going to be insane! The show is so scorched earth that not even the camera in the Oval Office was destroyed during the climactic superhero brawl. I don't know if Amazon had a gun to Eric Kripke's head and didn't give him a big enough budget. Hell, Season 3 felt like it had a higher budget. But focusing back on the ending in terms of Huey and Butcher's confrontation, this is a solid scene. I like the resolution between these two characters. However, the overall ending after this just feels so happy and sterile, which doesn't feel like it fits the overall tone of the show. Like, the true subversive ending is Butcher actually winning. What if the twist in that final scene is Huey shooting Butcher, but he grabs the trigger as he falls down and releases the virus before he dies? This moment actually reshapes the entire world and makes the ending feel grand, staying in line with the thesis of the show that most superheroes are fundamentally rotten to their core. It's a very flawed world, and I think it would have been an interesting exploration in actually having the balls to pull this narrative trigger. Also, this doesn't have to be an extremely cynical ending for all of our characters. They indicated that they could probably get away on an isolated, deserted island to escape the pandemic. Like, maybe Annie flies off with Kimiko to escape or something. The current ending kind of just feels like Amazon doesn't want this IP to be permanently closed. It gives them the option to maybe one day do a sequel series. Like, Vought still being around and not being shut down or dissolved is ludicrous. The government would definitely step in and dismantle all of that shit given what's happened. Like, they did a full-on coup on the government. I feel this plot point reinforces that sensation of playing it safe. Nothing really surprising happened, and this all goes back to the underwhelming Season 5 conundrum. Thanks for watching, and my Letterboxd, Discord, and Patreon links are in the description. Have a nice day. Thanks as always to my amazing top patron, Logan Farmer.